Welcome back to Together with Lidi. We're going to continue reading the Bible a little bit at a time in order. Right now we are on Genesis chapter 35. So this is when Jacob returns to Bethel. And we saw in the previous chapters quite a few things happened. Jacob met his brother Esau for the first time in a while. And they had a really good reunion, and we thought maybe things were going to get better between the brothers, but then Jacob pulled another one of his old tricks and just abandoned his brother again. And we also see that Jacob also abandons his daughter in her time of need after she is raped. And for political reasons, he decides not to pursue justice for her, but then her brothers take control and get revenge on her behalf. So that was where we left off last time. So now in Genesis chapter 35, we're seeing Jacob return to Bethel. So, God told Jacob, "Return to Bethel, where I appeared to you when you were running from your brother Esau. Make your home there and build an altar for me." Jacob said to his family and to everyone else who was traveling with them, "Get rid of your foreign gods. Then make yourselves acceptable to worship God and put on clean clothes. Afterwards, we'll go to Bethel. I will build an altar there for God, who answered my prayers when I was in trouble and who has always been at my side." And you might remember that when Jacob left with his wives and children, Rachel stole her brother Laban's idols. So I don't know if Jacob knows about this at this point, but I guess they have other idols in their camp right now, and so they need to cleanse before they go to Bethel. So everyone gave Jacob their idols and their earrings, and he buried them under the oak tree near Shechem. While Jacob and his family were traveling through Canaan, God terrified the people in the town so much that no one dare bother them. Finally, they reached Bethel, also known as Luz. Jacob built an altar there and called it God of Bethel, because that was the place where God had appeared to him when he was running from Esau. While they were there, Rebekah's personal servant Deborah died. They buried her under an oak tree and called it Weeping Oak. God blesses Jacob at Bethel. After Jacob came back to the land of Canaan, God appeared to him again. This time he gave Jacob a new name and blessed him by saying, "I am God all-powerful, and from now on your name will be Israel instead of Jacob. You will have many children, your descendants will become nations, and some of the men in your family will even be kings. I will give you the land that I promised Abraham and Isaac, and it will belong to your family forever." After God had gone, Jacob set up a large rock so that he would remember what had happened there. Then he poured wine and olive oil on the rock to show that it was dedicated to God. And he named the place Bethel. Benjamin is born. Jacob and his family had left Bethel and were still a long way from Ephrath when the time came for Rachel's baby to be born. She was having a rough time, but the women who were helping her said, "Don't worry, it's a boy." Rachel was at the point of death, and right before dying she said, "I'll name him Benoni," but Jacob called him Benjamin. Rachel was buried beside the road to Ephrath, which is also called Bethlehem. Jacob set up a tombstone over her grave, and it is still there. Jacob, also known as Israel, traveled to the south of Eder Tower, where he set up camp. During their time there, Jacob's oldest son Reuben slept with Bilhah, who was one of Jacob's other wives, and Jacob found out about it. And then we don't find out what happens, I guess. Jacob's 12 sons. Jacob had 12 sons while living in northern Syria. His firstborn Reuben was the son of Leah, who later gave birth to Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Leah's servant Zilpah had 2 sons, Gad and Asher. Jacob and his wife Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin. Rachel's servant woman Bilhah had 2 more sons, Dan and Naphtali. Isaac dies. Jacob went to his father Isaac at Hebron, also called Mamre or Kiriath Arba, where Isaac's father Abraham had lived as a foreigner. Isaac died at the ripe old age of 180. Then his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Chapter 36. Esau's family. Esau, also known as Edom, had many descendants. He married 3 Canaanite women, which, as you remember, that gave a lot of heartache to his mother, Rebekah. He married 3 Canaanite women. The first was Ada, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, not Elon Musk. The second was Oholibamah, the daughter of Anna and the great-granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite. The third was Besemith, who was Ishmael's daughter and Nebaioth's sister. Esau and his 3 wives had 5 sons while in Canaan. Ada's son was Eliphaz, Besemith's son was Reuel. Oholibamah's 3 sons were Jeush, Jelam, and Korah. Esau took his children and wives, his relatives and servants, his animals and possessions he had gotten while in Canaan, and moved far from Jacob. He did this because the land was too crowded and could not support him and his brother with their flocks and herds. That's why Esau made his home in the hill country of Seir. Esau lived in the hill country of Seir and was the ancestor of the Edomites. Esau had 3 wives, Ada, Besemith, and Oholibamah. Here is a list of his descendants. Esau and Ada had a son named Eliphaz, whose sons were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Getam, and Kenaz. Timnah was the other wife of Esau's son Eliphaz, and she had a son named Amalek. Esau and Besemith had a son named Reuel, whose sons were Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. Esau and Oholibamah had 3 sons, Jeush, Jelam, and Korah. Chiefs and leaders in Edom. Esau and Ada's oldest son was Eliphaz, and the clans that descended from him were Teman, Omar, Kenaz, Korah, Getam, and Amalek. These and Esau's other descendants lived in the land of Edom. The clans that descended from Esau and Besemith's son Reuel were Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. The clans that descended from Esau and Oholibamah, the daughter of Anna, and Jeush, Jelam, and Korah. All of these clans descended from Esau, who was known as Edom. Seir was from the Horite tribe that had lived in Edom before the time of Esau. The clans that had descended from him were Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. Lotan's sons were Hori and Heman. His sister was Timnah. Shobal's sons were Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. Zibeon's sons were Aya and Anath, the same Anna who found an oasis in the desert while taking the donkeys of his father out to pasture. Anna's children were Dishon and Oholibamah. Dishon's sons were Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Shiran. Ezer's sons were Bilan, Zevon, and Akan. Dishon's sons were Uz and Aran. The clans of the Horites were Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan, and they lived in the land of Seir. My mouth was not made to say these names. I'm so sorry if any of these names are your name and I'm messing it up. I apologize. Before there were kings in Israel, the following kings ruled Edom, one after another. Bela, son of Beor, from Dinhabah. Jobab, son of Zerah, from Bozrah. Husham, from the land of Teman. Hadad, son of Bedad, from Avith. Bedad had defeated the Midianites in Moab. Samlah, from Masrekah. Shaul, from the city of Rehoboth, on the Euphrates River. Baal-Hanan, son of Akbor. Hadar, from the city of Pau. His wife Mehetabel was the daughter of Matred, and the granddaughter of Mezahab. The clans that descended from Esau took their names from their families and the places where they lived. They are Timnah, Alva, Japheth, Oholibamah, Elah, Pinan, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magdiel, and Imran. These clans descended from Esau, who was known as Edom, the father of the Edomites. They took their names from the places where they settled. And so when I was a kid, I definitely liked to skip over these long lists of names because there was no action and no story, really. But I think it's important that these things were included because these are family records, and it's something that can hopefully be traced and tracked, which makes the biblical authenticity a little bit easier to prove if we're able to find the names of these people and all the times that they lived and everything. That is something that researchers use to kind of establish a timeline in the Bible, and also to show that this isn't just a book that someone made up. Even me as like a fantasy writer, I would not want to create this sort of lineage. That would take a long time to try to make everything up. So if you're ever curious about the lineage of the Bible, definitely check it out. So, chapter 37. Joseph and his brothers. Jacob lived in the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac had lived, and this is the story of his family. When Jacob's son Joseph was 17 years old, he took care of the sheep with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. But he was always telling his father all sorts of bad things about his brothers. So we kind of know what kind of brother Joseph is. I don't know if you've ever had a sibling like that who's always tattling on you, or maybe you were the tattler. I know for me, I wasn't the tattler. At least I don't think I was. Jacob loved Joseph more than he did any of his other sons because Joseph was born after Jacob was very old. Jacob had given Joseph a fancy coat to show that he was his favorite son, and so Joseph's brothers hated him and would not be friendly to him. So some of you might remember this as the coat of many colors. So Dolly Parton song, but also, it's in the Bible. It's a fancy coat. One day, Joseph told his brothers what he had dreamed, and they hated him even more. Joseph said, "Let me tell you about my dream. We were out in the field tying up bundles of wheat. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles gathered around and bowed down to it." His brothers asked, "Do you really think you're going to be king and rule over us?" Now they hated Joseph more than ever because of what he had said about his dream. Joseph later had another dream, and he told his brothers, "Listen to what else I dreamed. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." So Joseph just doesn't know when to shut up and stop. Just stop. When he told his father about this dream, his father became angry and said, "What's that supposed to mean? Are your mother and I and your brothers all going to come and bow down in front of you?" Joseph's brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept wondering about the dream. So at least Jacob is thinking about it. Obviously, Jacob has had many dreams from God, and so maybe he's wondering if God is giving a dream to his son, Joseph. Joseph is sold and taken to Egypt. So this is a story that a lot of you probably know. It was adapted into a movie, Joseph, King of Dreams. I think it's DreamWorks. I think it's the same people who made The Prince of Egypt. So this is a story that is pretty popular, and now we're going to get the actual biblical words of it. One day, when Joseph's brothers had taken the sheep to a pasture near Shechem, his father Jacob said to him, "I want you to go with your brothers. They are with the sheep near Shechem." "Yes, sir," Joseph answered. A little bit of yeah, Joseph. His father said, "Go and find out how your brothers and the sheep are doing. Then come back and let me know." So he sent him from Hebron Valley. Joseph was near Shechem and wandering through the fields, when a man asked, "What are you looking for?" Joseph answered, "I'm looking for my brothers who are watching the sheep. Can you tell me where they are?" "They're not here anymore," the man replied. "I overheard them say they were going to Dothan." Joseph left and found his brothers in Dothan. But before he got there, they saw him coming and made a plan to kill him. They said to one another, "Look, here comes the hero of those dreams. Let's kill him and throw him into a pit and say that some wild animal ate him. Then we'll see what happens to those dreams." Reuben heard this and tried to protect Joseph from them. "Let's not kill him," he said. "Don't murder him or even harm him. Just throw him in a dry well out there in the desert." Reuben planned to rescue Joseph later and take him back to his father. So I don't know if you guys have ever been in this situation where you see your group is going to do something wrong, and you don't really know that you should completely stand up and say that it's wrong, but you try to sort of convince them to do something a little bit less wrong so that you can intervene later. So it seems that Reuben is a little bit intimidated by his brothers. He's got a lot of them, and he still cares about Joseph and at least doesn't want to murder him. So good job, Reuben. When Joseph came to his brothers, they pulled off his fancy coat and threw him into a dry well. As Joseph's brothers sat down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with all kinds of spices that they were taking to Egypt. So Judah said, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and hide his body? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not harm him. After all, he is our brother." And the others agreed. When the Midianite merchants came by, Joseph's brothers took him out of the well, and for 20 pieces of silver they sold him to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the well and did not find Joseph there, he tore his clothes in sorrow. Then he went back to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone! What am I going to do?" Joseph's brothers killed a goat and dipped Joseph's fancy coat in its blood. After this, they took the coat to their father and said, "We found this! Look at it carefully and see if it belongs to your son." Jacob knew it was Joseph's coat and said, "It's my son's coat. Joseph has been torn to pieces and eaten by some wild animals." Jacob mourned for Joseph a long time, and to show his sorrow, he tore his clothes and wore sackcloth. All of Jacob's children came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will go to my grave mourning for my son." So Jacob kept on grieving. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold Joseph in Egypt to a man named Potiphar, who was the king's official in charge of the palace guard. So it seems like they don't have any CSI Bethel in this story. So the brothers were able to trick Jacob. It seems like trickery runs in this family. So unfortunately, Jacob is getting the brunt of that right now. Chapter 38, Judah and Tamar. So now we don't know what's happening to Joseph right now. We've gone to another side plot. About the time Judah left his brothers in the hill country and went to live near his friend Hira in the town of Adullam. While there, he met the daughter of Shua, a Canaanite man. Judah married her, and they had 3 sons. He named the first one Ir. She named the next one Onan. The third one was born when Judah was in Chezib, and she named him Shelah. Later, Judah chose Tamar as a wife for Er, his older son. But Er was very evil, and the Lord took his life. So Judah told Onan, "It's your duty to marry Tamar and have a child for your brother." Onan knew this child would not be his, and when he had sex with Tamar, he made sure that she would not get pregnant. The Lord wasn't pleased when Onan took his life too. Judah did not want the same thing to happen to his son Shelah, and he told Tamar, "Go home to your father and live there as a widow until my son Shelah is grown." So Tamar went to live with her father. Some years later, Judah's wife died, and he mourned for her. He then went with his friend Hira to the town of Timnah, where his sheep were being sheared. Tamar found out that her father-in-law Judah was going to Timnah to shear his sheep. She also realized that Shelah was now a grown man, but she had not been allowed to marry him. So she decided to dress in something other than her widow's clothes, and to cover her face with a veil. After this, she sat outside the town of Enaim on the road to Timnah. When Judah came along, he did not recognize her because of the veil. He thought she was a prostitute and asked her to sleep with him. She asked, "What will you give me if I do?" "One of my young goats," he answered. "What will you give me to keep until you send the goat?" she asked. "What do you want?" he asked in return. "The ring on the cord around your neck," was her reply. "I also want the special walking stick you have with you." He gave them to her, they slept together, and she became pregnant. After returning home, Tamar took off the veil and dressed in her widow's clothes again. Judah had his friend Hira take a goat to the woman so he could get back the ring and walking stick, but she wasn't there. Hira asked the people of Enaim, "Where is the prostitute who sat along the road outside your town?" "There's never been one there," they answered. Hira went back and told Judah, "I couldn't find the woman," and all the people of Enaim said no prostitute had ever been there. So no one is apparently wondering why he's looking for the prostitute. This is apparently a very free society. "If you couldn't find her, we'll just let her keep the things I gave her," Judah answered, "and we'll better forget about the goat, or else we'll look like fools." Now he's worried. About 3 months later, someone told Judah, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has behaved like a prostitute, and now she's pregnant." "Drag her out of town and burn her to death," Judah shouted. Which, of course, behaving like a prostitute is so terrible, but for Judah to go and sleep with a prostitute is just normal. As Tamar was being dragged off, she sent someone to tell her father-in-law, The man who gave me this ring, this cord, and this walking stick is the one who got me pregnant. Those are mine, Judah admitted. She's a better person than I am because I broke my promise to let her marry my son Shelah. After this, Judah never slept with her again. I don't know if he ever slept with any other prostitutes again, but at least not her. Tamar later gave birth to twins, but before either of them was born, one of them stuck a hand out of her womb. The woman who was helping tied a red thread around the baby's hand and explained, "This one came out first." Right away his hand went back in, and the other child was born first. The woman then said, "What an opening you've made for yourself." So they named the baby Perez. When the brother with the red thread came out, they named him Zerah. That's quite the birth story. I don't know how uncomfortable and horrible that would be to have that happen. So that brings us to the end, where next we'll read Genesis chapter 39. There was a lot that happened in these few chapters. The Bible doesn't stand still. There's always some sort of trickery or sexual scandal or some sort of weird escapades that these families are going on. So yeah, definitely a lot to think about. We don't know what's happening to Joseph in Egypt. We just know that he's been sold to the palace, the official in charge of the palace guard. And then we went on this weird side quest with Judah and Tamar. So we're going to have to find out next time what happens. This is getting exciting. Other than that super long lineage that we had to read, it's a pretty exciting story. Like I said, as I'm reading this, I'm just in my mind thinking about the TV show of the Bible and how exciting it would be. Just all of the scandal, which again, it's real life, right? Everybody probably has something like that going on. And we're going through multiple generations, and we're going through all these different characters who were real people who actually lived. And all of them seem to follow a lot of the same paths, trickery. All of it is just so much trickery, especially the women who want to get pregnant. Just like before, what was it? I think it was when Lot's daughters lost their husbands in Sodom and Gomorrah, and they tricked their father into sleeping with him, with them to get pregnant. And, just all of these dramatic telenovela plots that happen. And yeah, you do see a lot of the hypocrisy and weirdness, like the fact that Judah can go around asking about the prostitute that he slept with, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, I don't know where she is, so we didn't have a prostitute like that here. But then for Tamar to to be a prostitute is some horrible scandal. Just that double standard, it's like, she had to have slept with someone, and why is that other person not also in hot water? So yeah, we see that a lot in today's society. It takes two to commit sexual immorality. So both people are equally guilty, and both people need to not point fingers at the other person. So yeah, just lots of plots. We're going to find out, I think, next time what's going to happen to Joseph. I hope so. We're getting to the end of Genesis. Like I said, I think it goes to chapter 45. So we are on chapter 40 next time. And we're going to, we do go on a little bit and find out a bit more of the Joseph King of Dreams plot that you might have remembered from the movie. So yeah, continue on. We're going to be reading chapter 40 to 42. So just 2 chapters next time. They're a bit long though. So we'll see you next time. If you have any comments, especially if your parents named you one of the names that I listed off in lineage, let me know. It seems like they're a bit older. There was a couple I don't really remember that I think might be some names that are still around today, but I'd be really curious to know. So we'll see you next time, and have a great rest of your day.